So again, what's another problem facing Israeli society that you never really hear about? Poverty. If you can imagine this, because we think about Israel as this economic superpower, regional superpower, at the very least, this high-tech marvel, right? So we imagine it as having a very powerful economy, but in actuality, while that may be true, there is still the highest poverty rate of all developed countries. Taking North America, US, Canada, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and Israel has the highest poverty rate. Okay, it's actually almost double the OECD average, if you can imagine that. Now, it's not just the average, we're also talking about the most vulnerable members of society, children. Israel also has the highest child poverty rate of all developed countries. Okay, and so what does Netanyahu do about this? What is his response to the poverty that's endemic in Israeli society, the differences between rich and poor? Well, he says, if we take away the ultra-Orthodox and the Arabs, our situation is excellent. In other words, it's because of these Arabs that we have poverty rates. If it wasn't for the Arabs, we wouldn't have poverty. Okay, blame the Arabs, we get it. I understand what you're trying to get at here. The problem is this also extends not just to general society, not only to children, but also to the elderly. And it's incredibly shameful, in my humble opinion. We see a situation where, on top of all those other stats I've already shown you, Israel has the highest elderly poverty rate of all the OECD countries, of all the developed countries. Elderly folk are getting a very, very small stipend, Social Security. It's quite embarrassing, actually. And so there was an effort this year to pass a law that would raise the funds that elderly Israelis are entitled to. Sad to report, however, that the government voted down this legislation to not bump up their Social Security, and the person who cast the vote that ended up quashing the resolution to raise elderly Social Security rate was actually Gila Gamliel, the minister responsible for the welfare of elderly people. She voted down the legislation, so it didn't pass. It's sad that this is the case. And it's even sadder when the very people that we imagine that are, that the state exists, if not for them, then for who? Holocaust survivors. Every single year around Holocaust Remembrance Day, we are treated to another series of newspaper articles where we are told that 1/3 of Holocaust survivors in Israel live below the poverty line. It's an incredible source of shame, and yet, despite this as a fact, and you actually have Holocaust survivors protesting this in Israel. Shoah v'chilpa, Holocaust and shame. It's shameful that they should have to do this. Because tomorrow will be too late, they write on their signs. And so what's Netanyahu's response? He turns his back on them. He doesn't do anything to help their plight. And so year after year after year, this is the same situation over and over again. Thankfully, this year there was a change. I'm happy to report there was a legislative effort to actually increase the amount of money that Holocaust survivors are entitled to. So finally we have a change in the situation. But give credit where credit is due. It wasn't Netanyahu, it wasn't his government, it was the Palestinian Party in the Knesset who actually passed that law to increase the benefits granted to Holocaust survivors. While this is happening, the Knesset itself, Israel's parliament, did a study, and it found that actually Israel's parliamentarians, its lawmakers, actually have the highest salaries compared to other members of parliament in other countries, statistically, both when you compare that to the average full-time salary of Israeli citizen, and also when you take into account the GDP by country. So Israeli parliamentarians are very well paid proportionately compared to other countries, including the USA. Despite this, we see that that's not enough for Netanyahu. And if you look in the Israeli media, you'll find that he is currently being investigated on a whole host of investigations for corruption. It's like the man got an MBA from Harvard, yet he claims till this day he doesn't know how to use a credit card. He refuses to pay anything for anything himself, but he's happy to, secure funds from this direction and that direction. Just today, Trump called Netanyahu. He made a call to him. He wanted to talk to him, but at that moment, Netanyahu couldn't easily take the call because he was being questioned by the police yet again for more corruption charges. So he actually had to ask the police, hold on a second, I have to have a few words with the President of the United States. I mean, this is ongoing. This has gone on and on and on. It goes deeper and deeper. And it gets to the point where, if you can imagine this, the ruling party, Netanyahu's party itself, is now taking him to court because the finances of the party are so opaque and they don't know what's going on, and so they want to open it up and see what's actually happening with party funds and make it more transparent, and Netanyahu is resisting it. So actually the comptroller of the Likud party is taking Netanyahu to court over this. This is the extent of the corruption in Israeli society. Now, a couple years ago, I did a series of talks called Inside Israel's Race Wars, exactly 2 years ago, on college campuses throughout the United States and Canada. And at that point, I explained that in the months and years just previous to that talk, all 12 of these Israeli mayors had been either investigated or charged or convicted of corruption, just in the previous couple of years. All 12 of these mayors. That was 2 years ago. Since that time, since I gave that tour, that lecture, I'm afraid to admit that the list goes on and on. Since that time, just since March 2015, since March 2015, the last 2 years, the list of mayors that have been, again, investigated, charged, and convicted of corruption crimes, this mayor, this mayor, this mayor, this mayor, this, and this mayor. Just in the last 2 years. This is an incomplete list, okay? It also includes this mayor, and this mayor, and this mayor.